How do we catalog a plant that is an indoor plant? It is a plant that does not require sun, because the sun burns these plants. When the sun gives indoor plants the leaves, between the leaves will burn. What other feature they have? They are plants that you should water every 8 days. There are some that every 10 days, depending on the place, the space that has so much heat, how much light you have, and there are some indoor plants that are showing that they do not need water every 8 but every 15 days. The fact that we do not have the seasons that we have in many parts of the world allows us to have plants that last for generations and for a long time. Because when in other parts indoor plants or balcony plants, the winter season comes, everything is over. Spring returns and they start to take out in all supermarkets plants, but they are plants of a season in perishable plants. Here in Colombia we take out fruits. Passion flower. We take out some things and it allows us to have plants that we have in our homes are perishable, since we manage the care. Take good care of the plants, be attentive, it is a living being, it is like a pet, you have to be attentive, it is a responsibility. Outdoor and flowering plants are a little more perishable and are renewed more by seed. By the same process, for example of fruit trees, which take seed, die, come back, and the same thing. Indoors it is different. Indoors the plant can last many years as long as you take good care of the space, good air, good light, watering and fertilizing every month. It is not changing the soil, the plants do not need. It is not moving the soil, but adding nutrients to the soil. With respect to light, plants with good air and good light, plants with lighter leaves, plants with greener leaves will withstand a darker space. Where suddenly in air-conditioned offices where the windows are very limited, for example, the Yanaker, which are already large plants that can fill the space and withstand these spaces, which have less light. The air is not much, but the most important thing is not to overdo it with water. Let the plant dry very well to water it again, because it is a space where it is enclosed, it does not have the capacity to evaporate the water well, the excess of water is deadly. For example, when there is excess of water the leaf turns yellow at the tip, and when you pick it up, it is soft. A lot of water, when the tip is equally dry, but at the same time it is toasted, it is lacking water. That is one of the tips. There are times when a plant has too much water, when it rots and there is no way to recover it, but there are times when it can be solved. It shows on the leaves, it shows. As I said, if it is dry or if it is very wet. Basically when you are going to add water, just put a little bit in the soil and see if it is wet. Wait another day, another 2 days, if it is still wet wait a little bit more. You should not think that the plant needs more water. If it is not asking for it, the roots will absorb as it needs it, but if you put more and more and more it will collapse the system. Let's explain the watering of indoor plants. This plant Massagina water every 8 days, only in the ground. Do not wet the leaves, as we know if the plant needs water, if we must pour water. For example this Massagina is a plant that is newly transplanted therefore already watered. As we can see the land is completely wet. We must wait 8 or 10 days for it to dry well and pour water again. The secret of indoor plants is to manage watering and not to wet the leaves. For example, this philodendron is a plant that should be watered every 8 or 10 days, because it has a thicker leaf, more fleshy, that is, it retains more moisture. This is, for example, this substrate, as we can see, is still wet. It has been watered for approximately 4 or 5 days. We must wait another 4 to 5 days to check the soil again if it is dry, and then we can add water. This is a shot. Water every 8 days as well. Monstera shot. We must move the substrate, the decoration. It has to be able to look at the soil. We must put our finger in a little bit, because many times the soil is dry on top and wet underneath, and if it is wet we wait for the soil to dry out. This is a Miami that already needs water, because we are going to see how the substrate is. The substrate is totally dry. It is already asking for water. Every 8 days in the soil I am going to show you how the watering process is. Many times, when pouring the water with a very big Coke, when pouring the water the boot, we should not do that. We should do it calmly. Pour it so that the plant can absorb it. We wait for the water to go down. We return and water, which is the idea that the whole plant is wet. Not only a little bit, not in the leaves, that the whole substrate is well moist. We wait 8 days, 10 days, when we see it well dry. It depends a lot on the place where it is, how much heat it gets, how much wind it has. And check very well the depth of the plant. That is like the whole process of irrigation of indoor plants. It is good to fertilize them every month and avoid wetting the leaves. If you are going to clean the leaves with a wet cloth, you do not need to pour milk or oil. Nothing, a wet cloth, so that it does not cover the breathing of the plant. When we want to transplant an indoor plant, because you bought a nicer container, because it is getting narrower, because you want it to grow more, the most important thing is the drainage, that the pot has a hole, or you have to make it. Otherwise you have to look for another type of substrate, another type of plant. Put a small mesh in a pebble, or just a pebble, or some pieces of clay pot. Something to make the hole so that when you pour the soil in the hole it does not remain directly. Because the soil goes down and cakes. And if it cakes, the whole hole will be covered and excess water will pass through and the plant will rot. You put a little bit of soil, make sure that the plant is not more buried than it already is, and you go back and fill it with soil on the sides. What kind of soil? A good soil, fertilized, with sand, with some organic fertilizer. It can be humus, chapanos, any organic fertilizer. There are not many quantities, because there are parts where they put too much coconut husk or rice husk to the soil, and that already loses the nutrients because it has no place to retain any humidity or nutrients. The soil is the key substrate of everything in theory. But there are some plants, for example, anthuriums are planted only in coconut chips, because they have roots that are very fleshy and the soil rots them. The chip is a looser substrate that gives it the ability to root. The coconut chip is a good substrate, ideal for planting in containers that do not have drains. It is a very good substrate, which is replacing the moss. The moss was used by our grandmothers, our ancestors, to plant the plants, but we were destroying the environment. For example, here in Santa Helena, the farmers used to take out moss and bring it here to Medellin, but that is a very important layer for the environment that gives humidity to the soil. Then that substrate replaced it, and the indoor plants are working excellently in that. Recently NASA released a document making a reservation of several plants that are very beneficial for the oxygen of these times of climate change. For example, the monsteras. Many of the indoor plants are useful. There is a tape that is also very good. The mother-in-law's tongue or sansevieria, that provide a lot of oxygen to the space and at a visual and design level have greatly improved the spaces. At this time the monsteras are a very nice plant. It gives a lot of oxygen. It can be small if you put it in a small container, it will be small. If you put it in a large container it will grow. There are smaller plants such as ferns. There are medium-sized plants such as aglaonemas, depending on the space you need. If you need it for a corner, we would recommend a garnet, yenire, trunk of happiness or masagiana, which is one of the plants that many homes use. Because its name says it is the trunk of happiness and it is a plant that is in harmony in homes. And if you need it for a table, there are smaller plants, peperonias. The most important thing is good light and water. People have realized how necessary plants are in the house and the benefits they bring. Home gardens, aromatic plants, which you can use to make your aromatic spaces change, not only visually, not only at the level of design, but at the energy level. It is more comfortable, it is cooler. The energies are different. When people say it many times when they enter a house with plants, or the environment is different. The pandemic has created the need for the essential, and what are those things? People are much healthier. Planting your own vegetable garden. You will not have the capacity to plant all the vegetables. But having a lettuce, having a little bit of cilantro, in a space that has that serves you in one way or another to contribute to the environment and to your health. Why should you have a plant at home? Because it is something that will fill you with love, that you have to be aware of something. It is like when we had a Tamagotchi. But this is something that will show you that if you are taking care of it, it will give you a new leaf. It will get a more beautiful color. I think it is a de-stressing. What we can see and feel with all of us who work here. We live happily.